Hey everybody, welcome back to Brightside Babe. I am so excited to be back with episode 3. It's going to be a good one. The people who were there and the people who weren't. And I will tell you that one of the people is not ChatGPT, as we talked about in episode 2. So if you are just starting to listen, great. You can go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2. But you don't have to, because each of these episodes is a progression, but unique in its own right. So I am really excited about this episode. It is so relevant to anybody going through cancer, anybody going through a trauma. And I think cancer or any trauma has a weird way of showing you exactly who people are. I think some people show up with food, rides, texts, humor, and support, but you're also going to have some people that just disappear. And that can happen for many reasons, and we'll get into that. But I think, the other piece of this is the stuff people say. And that's daily life, right? That's not just cancer or people responding to trauma. I truly believe that people are well-intended, but, we all fuck up sometimes. So here we go, episode 3, where the F did everybody go? One of the fun things about getting cancer is finding out who your friends are. And I kind of compare it, it's basically a friendship audit you didn't ask for. So I think, we've talked about the dark side, we've talked about surviving and wondering what the hell comes next. And today we're really going to focus on something nobody really prepares you for, and that's the people. So we talked a little bit in episode 2, cancer definitely, and again, any trauma. This podcast, for anyone that's just starting to listen, is really about just overcoming really difficult things. It happens to be that my really difficult thing was breast cancer, but I really feel that everything we talk about can be related back to the most challenging times in your life. I think not only does cancer change you, it changes your relationship. So I wanted to just start by talking on a bright side note, which is the people who showed up. For me, I was very fortunate. I had a village of people. The difficult part was when I was diagnosed, my son was only 1.5 years old. So from a personal standpoint, my life was really full. In one way, I feel really grateful that he was so young, because he's not going to remember a lot of this. That being said, I do feel that I missed out in some ways because so much of that time was a blur. And looking back, I'll rewatch videos and I don't remember things. And some of that's chemo brain, but a lot of it is, right, that trauma can do that. It can make you remember things in a different way. It can make you block certain things out, and that's your brain protecting you. But like I said, I was fortunate to have a really great village, and I want to shout out that village because I think, I am so grateful, and it's hard for the people that really showed up that were in the down and dirty and the gritty with me during the throes of treatment. There's really no way to thank them. Instead, it's, showing appreciation. So my family, my husband, he really, and we talked about this when I was starting treatment. I talked about my mom in previous episodes. She didn't give me a choice about showing up, which is sometimes the best way, just taking charge, because you feel so out of control that somebody coming in and kind of taking charge and controlling, that was the one time in my life that I found that to be really reassuring. But my husband and I talked a lot about when I was diagnosed that his role really needed to be like holding down the fort and really like holding it down at home, making sure Jack had that consistency. And it's not to say that I wasn't around, but certain parts of my treatment, I couldn't get out of bed. And I was sensitive to not wanting Jack to see me that way, but also wanting to be a consistent figure in his life. And so my husband stepped up to the plate in ways that I can't even verbalize. He was my personal chef. He was a full-time nanny, and he never complained. As I got deeper into treatment, I did reach out to my mom and sister and say, hey, I need your help with Jack, because the other piece of this is I wanted my husband, I wanted to be able to still connect with him, and he needed a break. And I was trying to be really sensitive to people that were my smallest circle, which is my family. I didn't want them to burn out. And I think looking back, I should have not worried about that as much, but my nature is to worry about everybody else and not always put myself first. And that's something that I'm learning how to do. So my husband was wonderful, and my sister and my mom, they each kind of took turns taking one night of the week. So Max and I would get, 2 nights off, which was really, really helpful. And I let go of the guilt of sort of what felt like pawning Jack off, my son, to, my family. But I also knew that he really thought of them as his family, expanded family. And my niece and nephew, he talks about them like they're his siblings. And, besides the fact that I didn't have sex and birth them, I think of them as like an extension of my kids. We have such a special relationship. But that is one thing that I really, really want to emphasize is if you have young children, and that's a unique piece, right, of going through trauma, going through cancer when you're young, if you have children, that's something that, we don't talk about in a lot of support groups, and how to manage that and how to continue to have intimacy with your partner. Which, on that note, my husband was also really great in that way. Like, we found intimacy in different ways rather than physical, and there's ways to do that and still keep your relationship alive and still maintain that bond. So as I've already talked about, my mom, kind of her role, and it's funny, it was like a cast of characters, like each one was playing a different role, each had a different character arc. Like I really thought about it that way, and that was kind of helpful because you sort of have to like attack it from all sides. So my mom pretty much, like I said, she drove back from Florida in like 2 days in record time. And basically from the beginning was like, I'm going to every single appointment with you. And like, I'm not really giving you a choice. I think she missed one chemo, and that was because we wanted my dad to be there, and he ended up taking me to that chemotherapy, which I will say was anxiety provoking because my mom and I just got into a rhythm with the appointments. She knew when to step back and allow me to take the lead in conversations, and there were times where that just couldn't happen. And she was an oncology nurse for 35 years. So use those people in your life that are, calming to you. They don't need to be clinical, but they really just need to be your advocate, because especially as you're going through chemotherapy where your mind state is altered, you're just not all there, you're really sick, you really just are focusing on getting through treatment. You can't think about all the other things and the decisions that need to be made. So whoever that is in your life, like, make sure you have that person. And it's helpful if that person is consistent in appointments and all the things, because they really sort of hear the scope and hear the progression at each of the appointments and are able to really be a very informed advocate. My sister's role, and my sister is somebody that is deeply empathetic, deeply caring. She is just an amazing person. And she was there for me, but my sister can struggle with the emotional side of things and expressing that. And I also think her sister being sick, that was a lot to digest. We had to talk about things that we haven't really talked about, like if I were to die, if things that are really uncomfortable for anybody. But my sister stepped in as just like the doer. Like outside of my appointments, she would pick Jack up from school. I had a couple of different hospitalizations that were unexpected. And so decisions and action needed to be taken really quickly, and she was always there. And she works full-time. She's got 2 kids of her own, and she never hesitated to be Jack's rock throughout the entire piece. So when Max wasn't available or when he needed to be with me at the hospital, like, there were no questions asked. I remember I had to be hospitalized down in Boston for, I think, like 4 days. And they all took turns of coming down. My husband came down one night and slept in the room. My mom came down and slept in the room. My sister came down, and, it was so funny. She just crawled into bed with me, and we watched movies all night. And in some weird silver lining way, I look back on that really fondly, because if anybody has siblings, and just life, right? Like, as you go through life, as you have children, you get married, like, your priorities shift. You have less and less of that time to spend with your sibling or best friend, or just, your life really just consumes you, and your personal time just becomes more difficult to find and just to have a personal life, especially when your kids are young. And so getting that time with my sister felt really special. And like I said, I look back on that super fondly, and I would encourage all of you, as you think about your journey, or if you're going through it now, is to really try to find the silver lining in those ways. And again, make sure it's people that you feel you can be vulnerable with, that you can be raw with, because, when people are going through the most difficult time in their life, they need that. And they have to know you. They have to know you and know how you are, and realize that, there's going to be really hard days. There's going to be anger. There's going to be, like the 12 steps, or however many steps. I think I'm thinking of AA, but I think just the stages of grief: acceptance, denial, anger. I'm sure I'm missing some steps, but you have to be able to go through that and really trust the people around you. And that leads me into my next point: is there are going to be a lot of people that reach out, and not all of them are going to be helpful. On the flip side, you're also going to have people that reach out that you never expected. And then you're also going to have people reach out that do not say the right things. And that can be hard to manage. It can be hard to internalize it. It can feel overwhelming. So as we think about, what's helpful, what's not helpful, the people piece of everything, I think, for me, I felt this immense pressure at the beginning, because stuff was coming from all over the place. Like I said, I also was in a unique position of being the director of the cancer center that I worked at when I was diagnosed. So a lot of my coworkers knew, and some of my closest friends were my coworkers, but like everybody ended up finding out, and not because, there was like a breach in confidentiality, but I mean, I was, going bald, I was still trying to work, so clearly like I was sick. So, I mean, people were delivering meals and doing all the things. So the first thing I want to say is, don't you ever feel like when you're in the thick of it that you have to send a thank you card, that you have to reach out immediately, that you have to show that appreciation and make sure they know how much you treasure whatever it is that they've done for you. I think people understand, and by people I mean the right people, the people that are well-intended and love you and just want to do something nice and helpful. Those people are not expecting anything from you in return. And I know for me that was a really difficult thing to swallow, because that is my nature to want to reach out and say thank you so much, and I just didn't have the energy. So people understand it, and you'll have time later on to express that appreciation, or you don't, but people get it, and people just want to be helpful. So let go of that mindset that you have to, like follow Emily Post's book of like, what is the appropriate response when you receive a gift? Like, fuck that. You just need to focus on treatment, and the people that are the right people will understand that. So I think second piece is, there are going to be so many people reaching out, and I think finding somebody, and when I think about the characters, right, in my story, my sister really took point on being my kind of, she was sort of my delegate. I guess that's I don't know. Delegate? Is that the right word? She would really take the lead on responding to texts. And, there were a lot of text threads going on. I have a big extended family. So, and of course, they all wanted to kind of keep abreast of the situation, know updates, know what was going on. And so I would tell her like what I was comfortable sharing and what I wasn't comfortable sharing. So she would do that like via text. She would also she created an Amazon list for me, which I highly recommend, because people were like reaching out, like, what do you need? And I was like, well, I mean, you need different things at different phases. So she created an Amazon wish list for me that people would just go on and send to me. That was extremely helpful. And then she also helped me start a Caring Bridge, which is essentially an online platform that allows you to share your story and really creates a centralized location that people can go for updates. It's low maintenance. You don't have to say a lot, but it's just a way to, outside of kind of social media, because I didn't really want to post a lot, because I was already overwhelmed with the kind of the local response. Opening that up to a broader audience just felt intrusive. So I think making sure that you have that person in your life that you trust, that can really be, the frontman for you, that can kind of field the questions, the concerns, all the things. So we started with the bright side. So let's talk a little bit about the people who absolutely do not know what to say. And I think, again, I want to emphasize, I am a glass half full person, and I believe in intent. And I really believe that most people, now not all people, are well-intended. But nobody really trains you for what to do in a trauma, what to do when somebody's going through something like cancer or any illness. I think some people are better in those situations than other, and that's, life experience. Everybody at some point is going to go through a loss. Now, the impact of that is variable, and everybody reacts differently. But I think there are just some people that, for them, their natural reaction in those situations is to either completely step away or to, again, try to be helpful, but it's not always helpful. So I think a couple of things that I experienced, the memorable ones, was the people that I would sort of see off and on, because for a time, like, I was working, and then it got to a point where I was just too sick and I had to take a leave of absence. And so I was seeing people more sporadically. And I've talked about before how body image, the changes in your appearance, that is all at times devastating. It feels like you're saying goodbye to a version of yourself. And so you don't feel great. You look sick. You look tired. You look pale, which I'm already, like, I'm an Irish girl. I am super fair. So add cancer to that. Like, I looked translucent. It was fucking bizarre. But people would always say, like, if I hadn't seen them, like, you look fantastic. And, like, that, it's a nice sentiment, but, like, don't bullshit to bullshit. So for anybody out there listening that has somebody going through this or that is going through this, if you hear that, just take it in. You don't need to say anything. If you're listening to this and thinking, like, okay, I have so-and-so that's going through something similar, so what should I say? What you shouldn't say is you look great. Because again, when you are sick and you are going through all of this, it is so challenging and so difficult. And we know that we look a certain way. So I think just, like, avoiding anything with appearance in general, it's just a good idea. At least until, like, our hair starts to grow back and we start to sort of get back into some kind of appearance, body image that, we feel more confident in. The other one, and this is probably my least favorite, and I feel like before I got cancer, and I've talked about, I had, like, sort of 2 major traumas in a row. I had a late stage miscarriage at 20 weeks, and then literally like a year and a half after that, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The amount of people that said to me, everything happens for a reason. Like, if you want people to feel rage that are going through something really traumatic, that's the thing to say. Like, if you want people to have a blackout, then say that. But I could not think of a reason why anybody should have to go through a miscarriage at 20 weeks and why anybody at any time should have to go through cancer. Now, I get this sentiment, like, everything happens for a reason, and sometimes people would say, like, because God knows you can handle it. Well, first of all, like, again, I've shared I'm spiritual, like, as far as having a belief in any particular religion, I don't. And I have, I am all about different belief systems and people's belief in higher powers, whatever that may be. I think I became more spiritual through this journey because I felt like at times, like, there was an outside force pushing me along. And that was probably me doing that, but sometimes it just feels like you can't take any steps forward. So I think that everything happens for a reason sentiment is just, it's kind of a knife in the heart, because then you sort of feel like, okay, so this was supposed to happen to me? Like, are there things I could have done to prevent it? It just backfires, and it's not really what we want to hear when we're in the thick of it. And then the other one, which again, I can see, like, people want to find a way to relate and want a way to kind of start the conversation. So, and like everybody, and this is, I think, true, like if you talk to any particular person, they will say that they at least know somebody that had cancer or has been directly affected by cancer. It is common and it's unfortunate, and they continue to make leaps and bounds on research, on treatments, and every day I feel more hopeful for people going through metastatic cancer, people that have a high chance of recurrence, anybody living with cancer. I feel really hopeful about the landscape. But anyway, a lot of people would say to me, like, my friend's aunt had cancer, like my uncle had cancer, which totally get it. But it wasn't really something like, or people just like want to share their stories, and they're sharing them and thinking like, okay, like that would be helpful. Or like sometimes people, and I'm not kidding you, would be like, yeah, my uncle had cancer and he died. Well, shit. Thanks for kicking me while I'm down. So I think like there's a time and a place for personal stories and relating, and like specifically if your friend had stage 3 ER positive breast cancer, like sure, like let's talk about it, especially if it's a happy ending. But when you're in the thick of it, like you don't want to talk about your own cancer, let alone your friend's uncle's cancer. The other piece is, miracles happen every day, which, sure, like I don't know what I think of miracles. I think they happen, but I also think like I had a really good treatment team. I was proactive in doing self-breast exams, and I fought really hard. So I think sometimes when I hear that, miracles happen or the miracle cures, the snake oil, like I think that all takes away from like the people that are doing this amazing work, and also the people going through cancer or trauma. Like it takes everything you have. And so sort of then flipping it that this is a miracle, like it's not a miracle. It's putting in the work. It's just fighting. And we want that to be acknowledged. We don't want to give miracle the fucking credit. We want the credit. And of course there's the people, and I mean, shit, I think I shared, like, it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole, but there's so much information out there today, and we've talked about like AI, but this is where like human connection is so important, and also like stay in your lane. Like I feel like people, and this is true about anything, will watch like a TikTok, they'll put something into ChatGPT, and they're reading like surface level material and then want to share that like it's their truth or their expertise. So I think just like avoiding that, both as the patient, the person going through the trauma, as well as a friend, family member, caregiver, like let the experts handle it. And like we're already bombarded by so much information. So sharing like Marcy's TikTok that you happen to look at, it's just like not going to help things. So, we've talked about the people who showed up. We've talked about the people who didn't know what to say. So let's talk about, the people who disappeared. And I had a few of these. I had friends that I really expected to check in on me, and not expected like I was waiting for that text. But as time passed and I became like more clear-headed, I sort of started to think about and realize some of the people, like people I went to high school with that I was still friends with, that just didn't reach out or stopped calling or stopped texting. And I remember one person that I had been good friends with, and, I later saw her and she said, I just couldn't handle seeing you sick. And I think if you're someone's friend and you have a history, you got to show up. Like, it's really hard to see somebody that one day was completely healthy and the next day, the next week, they're losing their hair, they're vomiting, they look really sick. But we already feel so vulnerable and, like a burden at times. So then people sort of walking away or saying things like, I couldn't handle seeing you sick. It's like, well, too fucking bad. Like, people going through a hard time in their life, they need their people to show up. And in whatever way, like, you don't have to call every day, send a text, send a meal, send, a card. Those are the things that you can do. But I feel like we are living in a society that's becoming so jaded and becoming so afraid of human connection because we are so reliant on technology, AI. Like, is there original thoughts anymore? Like, it is scary. But I think when dealing with trauma and tragedy, human connection and human emotion are so important. There's also going to be like a natural transition, and some of that's good. Like, you kind of take stock, and relationships are going to change. Like, the people that really stuck by me, and I'll kind of get to like, the people that I didn't expect, but the people that stuck by me, my relationships deepened with them. My relationships with my family, my husband, being able to see how they carried me through that gave me such a deeper love and appreciation for them and just the way I look at them. And, you get married, you take the vows of in sickness and in health, but you don't really know that until you're in it. And I was very blessed by the people that showed up. But yeah, your relationships are going to change, some for the good, some for the bad. And my best advice is for those that are changing, in the way that you didn't expect, that are changing negatively, that have distanced, let them go. Because the people that show up at your worst are the people that you want around. And by show up, like, I mean, even in the smallest ways, those are the people that you want around. Those are the people that you want in your life, in sickness or in health. That's the bottom line. And then I think, the loneliness that can happen, even when you're surrounded by people. And we talked about this in episode 2 with survivorship. Like, you can have all the people show up and still feel incredibly lonely. And share that. Don't be afraid to say that. Because the more you talk about things, the more the people that are closest to you can understand and try to take steps to support you and meet you where you are. Because if you don't vocalize it, like, yes, they know you're sick. Yes, they know they're going through it. But the more you're able to say what you need, the more that people are able to kind of tailor that support. I also think, like, your relationships change. You definitely see people more clearly. But we also don't need to, like, villainize anyone. Because oftentimes, like, the people that you don't hear from, the people that might show back up after you're done with treatment and you're in survivorship, like, there's always a reason. And I'm not saying that the reason is a good one. And I'm not saying that you need to let them back in. But I mean, there's many reasons why people do the things they do. Sometimes people disappear because they're scared. Sometimes they don't know what to say. Sometimes they simply aren't capable of showing up. Sometimes too, they're going through something really difficult, or they just had a baby, and then sometimes they're just assholes, and that's true. I would say that's a small percentage, but sometimes that's true, and those people, sayonara. I think for the other, people in those categories, as you get through treatment, become stronger, become more clear-minded, feel like you're becoming the version of you that you maybe didn't recognize for a long time, you decide, do I want this person in my life? Do they bring value? It's always good to kind of take stock of things and people in your life. There's nothing like a good fucking cleanse. I was just talking to my husband last night, and I was like, this weekend, I want to go through my closet and go through all the stuff. I am a bit of a hoarder. I don't know that I would qualify for the show Hoarders, but I'm close. So, I got turned on by that. Just talking about cleaning out my closet, man, I felt very excited. Anyway, I think, give people the benefit of the doubt, but also, follow your gut, and life is too short. Have the people in it that bring value, that bring purpose, that make you feel good, because ain't nobody got time for that. And then if we think about the bright side, there are people that you never expected to show up that do. And what a silver lining to going through any trauma is you may find people that maybe you weren't that close to, or that you saw once a year, extended family that you don't see all the time, friends that you haven't talked to since college or high school. Whatever the case, there always are those people that come up. And I will say, since starting my podcast, that's been one of the things that I have loved, is people are listening and reaching out that I haven't talked to in years, or that developed cancer that I didn't even know they had, and being able to reconnect and hear their story. And it's been really joyful and really cool. So if I think about my journey and the people, I think I told this story maybe in episode 1, but one of my aunts, who I loved her dearly before cancer, love her dearly now, she would literally send me a card every week. And I did not expect that. A lot of, I call it the front loading, you're going to be love bombed at the beginning, and then it tapers off. And again, does not mean people don't care, just people are busy. They have their own lives. They have their own things. They may have their own traumas. So I think in the beginning, you're totally overwhelmed, and you're I don't even know what I need, because I can't stop puking. You're just so sick and so in it, and not in the mindset to really think clearly. There was also something really old school and nice about it. I felt like I had a pen pal. I mean, I didn't write back, but I still have all the cards. And again, my hoarder tendencies, a lot of people are and again, this is our society, not wanting to make those connections. If you can text instead of make a phone call, people are going to do it. They're going to send a Facebook. There's so many ways to communicate now that it's a little overwhelming. And the last thing I expected was to get a card every week. And she literally sent a card every week while I was going through chemotherapy. So shout out to Aunt Jean. You're amazing. And yeah, it was really incredible. I definitely had people reach out that I hadn't talked to in a while. And like at first I was like, oh, so now you pop up. But, I mean, looking back, it was nice. And, I think too, like I've had people reach out from high school, college that have gone through their own trauma, their own cancer journey. And like, I've had lovely conversations that I never expected. For some of these people, like I knew them peripherally, like we weren't even friends in high school or friends in college, but just the outpouring of love and support. And that's why like I go back to, you don't have to do these big grand gestures, like just sending a card, sending a text, like every once in a while. I think the key is being consistent and just being supportive. Like you don't have to feel like you need to say anything like super inspirational, like just a simple thinking of you, here for you, and love you. Like that's a great text. You're not putting any pressure, because like I hated when people would text and be like, what do you need? Like, what can I do? Like I was getting like 30 different text messages. And I know I sound ungrateful when I say that, but that's why I had to hire my sister to be my publicist, because you do need help with that and you feel like you have to respond. Do not feel like you have to respond. That's where, like I talked about, starting Amazon wish lists, doing things that people can, and then you can just text, like, I have an Amazon wish list, like, please check it out. But please also don't feel like you need to do anything, like, just hearing from you is lovely. So I think another silver lining, another bright side is people that you just didn't expect really showing up for you and really surprising you. And I think that was a really beautiful part of my journey and a very unexpected part. So I think, as we've started, this journey, Brightside Babe, I've said to you every episode, we will always end with a dark side and a bright side. And I try to relate it back to the topic we were talking about, which I know that I can at times be all over the place. But the dark side for this episode for me is that cancer showed me that some relationships weren't what I thought they were. And at times that was like kind of devastating to me. But now that I'm a little further out in my journey and my survivorship, I feel much more free and just not attached to those people. Like I don't want to spend my energy feeling angry about that, feeling, any sort of ill will towards those people. Like that's their choice. And, I've said in previous episodes, I keep my village tight because life is so crazy and so busy. Like it's quality over quantity. You can't take it personally. It has nothing to do with you. It's them. And like I said, you sometimes, like, you got to walk in the other person's shoes because sometimes you don't know what they're going through. The bright side is that this journey really did show me exactly who deserves a permanent seat at my table. And it's a small group. And again, I keep going back to that quality versus quantity, and it's so true. And it's going to deepen your relationships and really just enhance your quality of life. You don't have to chase people who walked away. And like I said, sometimes losing people is part of finding your people. I'm always going to go for that silver lining, baby. So a philosophy that I wanted to introduce and that, will recur in my future episodes is Brightside Babe rule number 1. Stop measuring people by what you wish they would do and start appreciating them for what they actually do. I love that because actions speak louder than words. I've always said that. I believe that. And, I think words can be meaningful, but following that up with action, consistency, those things are so important. And so, don't waste time on the people that aren't at your table. Like, break bread and enjoy the people that are around your table. So we are coming to the end of another Bright Side Babe episode. And I always like to end, on a high note. So I think if you're going through something hard right now, I want you to pay attention to the people who make you feel safe enough to be scared, angry, exhausted, or completely ridiculous. Those are your people. Those are your friends, family around your table. Nourish and spend your energy on those people and not on those that are not filling your cup. And if someone disappeared when you needed them most, maybe that's not the tragedy you thought it was. Maybe, just maybe, they just made room for someone or something better. And I so believe that. So, until next time, babes, and keep squinting at the bright side, because I promise you it's there. See you next time.